is AI going to make the game too difficult?
Now, the biggest challenge that anyone has is like, how do you make it so that like the models are small enough to be rendering on a device in a PS5 or in an Xbox?
Pretty much every game company is now starting to use AI in some fashion, mostly with generative art.
That is the main problem, especially in the Web3 games that are designed for only around tokenization and not around user experience.
AI is disrupting all industry, and gaming is definitely one of them. So in this session, the FinancialFox is hosting a discussion on AI and gaming with three gaming experts: Charles Reina, angel investor, VIP revenue ID Level Labs and partner Concept Venture; Robby Young, the Web3 game guru, CEO of Animoca Brands; and finally Luca Vajani, who is a well-known AI expert from Italy and also the co-founder of OMM Games, which will be a AI plus game coming to market very, very soon. I'm quite excited to see what my expert has to say on the topic, how AI is disrupting storytelling, game experience, and also game development. So there is so much to discuss. I hope that I can tackle some of the key points. If there are any game developers out there, that is definitely an episode that you don't want to miss, and anyone should actually miss that. So if you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, click the subscribe button now and follow us on social media to stay up to date with our news and interviews. We love your support as our platform is growing, but also from our videos and from our interviews, you are gonna get some really interesting insight if you are in the blockchain, AI, fintech space, and you are looking to stay at the top of all the development in the space. Obviously, if you have any comment or any feedback, don't hesitate to reach out to me on social media. You can do that on Twitter or send me an email at steffi@financialfox.news. I'm always here and I always welcome feedback. Finally, remember that all the content here is for informational purposes, nothing is for financial advice, even though we don't discuss much about investment in this panel discussion, but it's always important to say. So let's get straight into our interview. Hi everyone, it's great to have you on the show.
Hi.
Thanks so much for having us.
Hi, it's good to be here.
Yeah, brilliant. So I wanted this panel really to focus on AI and gaming, because there is not much out there is actually explaining the potential that AI can bring to gaming. And we talk about user experience, we talk about efficiency of game, actually making game more fun, which is all about, and all, the gaming community, especially the Web3 gaming community, is trying to have break some barriers and make games they are more futuristic and they can actually exactly be more fun for players. So before we dive into the subject, let's go around for just a quick introduction.
I'm Robby, and I work at a company called Animoca Brands, and we make games, all different kinds of games, from mobile casual games to more sort of console-style AAA games. And everything we do uses blockchain as infrastructure, so we make Web3 games, if that's a genre.
I'm Carlos. I'm VP of Revenue here at Level Labs. We do a lot of voice technology, so we created a brand new technology that is able to replicate human voices at very high quality. We've been growing quite a lot. So we launched the first product at the end of January. We quickly reached over 1 million users, and we've essentially been it hasn't stopped for us since then. And we've been working very closely with the game community, because at the end of it, creating voiceover for games and new experiences is part of essentially is part of giving new content to player, right? So more than very happy to be here for this.
Hi to everybody, I'm Luca, and I run some IT companies, some specialized on AI implementation and development, and some others focused on gaming. So we are here today to just try to make a mix of the technology, right? And I think it will be a fun discussion.
Well, Luca, you are too modest because, your company in Italy has been working with multiple games, and you are kind of like a well-known personality in Italy when it comes to AI. Anyway, let's start to unfold this subject, because AI is really in gaming is not something new. I mean, it's been part of video games since, the 90s. So what is actually happening now that everybody is talking about the potential of AI in gaming? But also what I would like maybe you to explain is how this AI in gaming has evolved over the years.
I think when we think about AI, we've had lots of different names for it over the years. More recently, we might have referred to them as bots on the internet. And originally, when I first grew up playing games at the beginning of video games, I guess it is, we just called it playing against the computer because that was an AI of a sort as well. But I think what we're seeing now is really a reference to things like large language models and generative art and things that allow us as game makers to really rethink the process of developing games, and hopefully these tools can allow us to make not only more interesting and exciting content, but also realize a lot of efficiencies. Everything we do uses bots.
Yeah, super interesting. I think you're right. The bots at the time playing against the computer was considered some kind of AI. What kind of role has AI in enhancing the gaming experience? So if we go straight to the point, right? How the user can play a more engaging, a fun game because of AI.
But now in game development process, there is still a huge AI works, because all the NPCs and the opponents we can find in a game are driven by a kind of AI. So it can be more or less articulated, and it can be more challenging or less challenging depending on the gameplay style of the game you're playing in. So we have also saw some big example of AI, like Shadow of Mordor has been a huge game where when it was recognized by the monsters, by the orcs, they remembered you, and if you meet the same NPC, the same opponent you have met before, he was remembering and act in a different way just the first time you interacted with him, And that this is, I think this is a big evolution. This is more enhancing a behavior inside the game, because in fact the game is changing in the time. Also with dialogue system, when you talk to an NPC and ask something and they answer something else, and some kind of AI can change the responses and the behavior, and also maybe sometimes the humor of the character many times when you interact with him 2 or 3 times maybe. So this is these are AI that are still in use and for sure make the game more fun. Now obviously I'm talking about an action RPG game. There are some really different styles, different kinds of games, strategic and also, but I think this is the action and RPG games now offer the most possibilities to AI integration and AI challenging and have more fun with the AI, because there is an impersonification of the user in the player character.
It's interesting, right? Because the way I see it, for the biggest contribution with AI right now, generative AI as it is today, right? It's the fact that or at least my personal opinion is it's not on the experience of the player today, right? It's more on how quickly you can get a game out there, how quickly can you generate assets, how quickly can you test ideas, and quickly also meaning from a cheap perspective, from a cost perspective, right? Because for me, the fact that you're able to do it at a much low, same quality, less resources, shorter time frames and everything, that's the biggest level of contribution that AI or generative AI today has. Yes, I think like interactions with players and personalizations, and then like bringing that AI that we used to play when we were growing up against the machine, and like it was a little bit dumb, but it was like, okay, like a formidable player anyway. That's like the next level, right? And I actually think like there is a lot of like gaming studies have been working on that. But for me, the biggest contributor today for 2023 is the asset generation and the speed of development. That's the only thing that really matters today, I think, because when we look at the numbers, like the majority of games like are not like generating like millions and millions in revenue. So how do you produce more to be able to find the right game that will give you that million in revenues and you get it out as quickly as possible? And then like next year probably it's going to be like the player experience overall, right? But like we're still not there yet.
Super interesting. Robby, do you want to comment something?
Sure. No, I think what both gentlemen said is absolutely correct. I mean, we're using generative art just to try to make our art teams more efficient, because obviously art in a world of free-to-play games where, content updates are kind of in a Web 2 model, the bread and butter of being able to sell IAPs to customers, then obviously, your art team and the cost of your art team is one of the big expenses of game production. So if you can make them more efficient, that's great. I think from the player side, one thing I have seen, which is quite cool, is we do have some portfolio companies who have been starting to implement AI, some LLMs basically for NPCs, for non-playable characters. And that's actually very cool because we're able to add a lot more realism to these kind of tangential characters in the story, so that when you're in some kind of a cityscape, for example, the people you pass by on the street will be having conversations with each other, but these will be spontaneously generated conversations, as opposed to canned dialogue, which, repeats over and over again historically in games. So I think that added level of realism is something that's just it's gonna be a curiosity, I think, for the next 12 months. And then after that, it's just going to start to blow our minds.
So when we talk about non-playable character, what is really their role in the game? And you mentioned about using AI to make those non-playable characters more active or more give more engagement within the game. Is that what AI is bringing to them?
I would say it's a little bit more like in the search on AAA console games, there's a big search. So I have a friend who I went to university with, and he ended up getting a PhD in AI. And one of his and this was a while ago, but his job was primarily working at one of the larger game companies in the world, trying to make clouds look more realistic in their AAA title. And that was what he did. And they needed somebody with a PhD to figure out how to simulate clouds in a natural way. Because we always underestimate the incredible complexity of being able to sort of model that in a game. And so I think the role of AI with characters is kind of the same thing. It's to give you that nth degree of realism of what's going on in the background. And because our brains are incredibly smart, we can always tell what's not real. And so it's very hard you have to apply that to not just the natural world, which we've been doing historically, but now you have to start applying it to the human characters as well.
It's just so interesting how these things move so fast. But Charles, picking up what you mentioned earlier about the focus of AI now being, the value on the art, on the game assets, and then you mentioned about the experience. Going back to 11 Labs, what you're doing, really adding a voice level that is realistic. That's where we come down to Robby's point, is more about the immersive experience than a game can bring. So looking at the work that you're doing at 11 Labs, how early we are on that? What is the things that maybe has to develop a bit more in order to get to the point where the experience is really much more immersive and realistic, also with other sense like speech, perhaps?
Yeah, I think like the technology is there for rendering on the cloud, right? So if you want to have those NPCs that essentially that will generate, like in open worlds, will generate dynamically content all of the time, then you need to be connected constantly to the internet. Now, the biggest challenge that then one has is like, how do you make it so that like the models are small enough to be like rendering on a device in a PS5 or in an Xbox or something like that, right? I think that's where the technology today is a little bit like because the models are so big that even though like very expensive like consoles don't really have enough power to run with them. But like very likely like next year, in second half of next year, we're going to be able to actually like start making that smaller, being able to render a device across the board, not 11 apps, but I think like across the industry, like going to be like specific models developed so that like you can put it in a PS5 and render it, or in a PS4. I think that's the biggest like technological barrier overall. Because technology is already there. Like I think like there is the element of like creativity overall, where you can use like an app for voice, or you could use Journey for like images, or you could use like something as like a topic for the LLM, the text generation and everything. And I think that's fantastic. But like you still need to connect it, and developing games and launching a game still will take you like a decent amount of time. So I don't think the technology has been there long enough to be seeing like a widespread number of games live today that are using LLMs, or they're leveraging LLMs. That's why I think like the actual value today lies in the asset, in the content creation, speeding up those ones, like those timelines. And then next year we'll start really seeing like how that is impacting the experience for players, right? That's where like I think like, but there is a bunch of like different elements that need to be overcome, like especially on rendering on devices versus like rendering on the cloud.
Yes.
And the cost going down. Let's also like be honest about it, right? If you need to constantly generate text for your NPCs or voice, or you need to dynamically generate images for your like levels and things like that, then the cost is like goes to the roof. So like you need to be able to actually do it at a much more economical way.
Yeah. Just a quick question to Robby. Robby, how many projects working with Animoca are integrating AI?
I would say that we have probably half a dozen companies that are specifically focused on AI, and that's become the main the core product suite. And I think pretty much every game company is now starting to use AI in some fashion, mostly with generative art, although AI has historically not been very good for like animation style graphics. It's much better for photorealism in its current incarnation. And then also we're trying to use LLMs for we use it for content generation mainly.
Okay.
But I think it's more about us pushing to try to get everybody, using it, because it's difficult. It's a new tool that people aren't used to working with. So to put it into your workflow takes effort.
Yeah, 100%. Luca, tell us a bit about procedural storytelling and how AI can help in crafting the game as the player play the game. It's a bit of like using the same words, but I think this is one of the things that you are trying to do with the game you are building, and I thought was quite interesting, because I can have my own experience as I'm playing the game become more interesting for me because he adapts to my style of play or something like that. Just explain that, because I think that's also with the non-player character, that could be also a very interesting area for games to look at AI as a tool.
Okay, yes, it starts because we are focusing on using AI to generate really special user experience. Is obviously a good tool for improve the production and to speed the production, yeah, of course. But I think the main return of using AI is to give a really new kind of experience. So what we have done a system integrated in a game SDK, that we are also working on 2 games now, that can recognize the player behaviors inside a gameplay session, and with some deep learning and classification can have a user profile and can adapt the game contents based on the gaming style of each user is play. And as for game content, I mean a level design, and I mean NPC given content and maps, dungeons and quests, So in this case, the AI is capable of change the game runtime when you play, and every time the user play, can learn about the player gaming style and what he likes to do. So if he is a player that is like to smash things, or like some kind of quest or some kind of investigation games, mini games inside the main one. So the AI can learn and can propose a more quality content for the user, so the user have more fun, that the game is never boring. That is the main problem, especially in the Web3 games that are designed for only around tokenization and not around user experience. So we're working on this way.
Yeah, sorry, but I think that's a very interesting point, because one of my questions that I was going to ask after is AI procedural storytelling going to make the game more boring because it's going to repeat my behavior rather than surprise me with something that maybe I'm not expecting, and that way the game become maybe not too easy, because actually AI could make the game too more difficult, but could a little bit boring, no?
No, I think it's the opposite. I think it's exactly the opposite. Because obviously is a kind of architecture, where we are going to project the game and make the AI evaluate some decision. The AI is capable of decision making. Is his job. And we can also find patterns against maybe many user sessions and propose to some user the content maybe that are good for another one and test. So the user always have different kind of game inside of game storytelling. So it's always different, and if it's well designed, I think it can be almost infinite play.
Okay, so you don't lose the creativity of the storytelling if you implement AI.
Yeah, you have to carefully plan it.
When you say plan it, tell me a bit about the data that you use to make for these changes in the game to happen, to adapt to the player.
Okay. We have a behavior recognition engine we have done. Okay, it's also we are filing a patent on this, and I've never heard a technology like that. But with some months of work, we have good results, and the data is automatically taken by the game SDK, and we are basically clustering the users. Clustering means give like a psychological profile, So you have some percentage of these, some percentage of these character, and basing on the user points, so we have another graph, another chart, and basing on this, we are going to classify the contents and propose to the user.
Okay, I have got another question. Is AI going to make the game too difficult, more challenging, to a point where the fun can be less than the effort to play?
It can, of course, it can. It's always a matter of weights.
Yeah,
it's a matter of weights when you're training an AI, and it's a matter of weights when you are allowing her to make a decision to which content proposed to the user. So you have to balance. These are kind of fine tuning when you're going to test the game, with many users or other AI that are testing the game, So this is useful also for this stage of the production process. And you have to balance it. You just have to balance it.
I think there is what the intent of it. So the trailer or the ideal scenario is it is not too difficult that people the players will drop, but it's not too easy that because they get frustrated, but it's not too easy that they will essentially see that it's too easy, I can get this done in a session and done, right? So you always need to keep going up as the player keeps getting more skills playing it. Needs to be a little bit more difficult, so that they're essentially constantly up playing and getting engaged more. But the alternative today is saying I start playing Jedi Survivor, and I select the level, right? My level might not be I might not be at that level, but I might find too complex, or I might find that it's too easy, right? And as such, we don't really today it's categorizing maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 levels. And I need you to just stick on that one. What I'm saying here is like you could have like thousands of different variations of levels that will make it slightly more difficult each time that you play or as you keep playing, and it's constantly adapting to you. And I think that's the beauty of it, because then you end up having this like endless cycle that like you always want to play a little bit more. You always want to play a little bit more because like you want to get to the next level, right? Or because you're getting better at it. But you're not getting bored because you're too good at it.
Yeah, super interesting. Robby, I'm curious about the integration of AI and blockchain. Can we talk about this? Does it make sense? What actually, how does it look like?
Sure. I think the most obvious use case, of course, is that if you think about what AI is doing, AI is essentially humans harnessing the power of computers to do things on their behalf. And something that's a very, very sophisticated version of what we'd normally call a script, where you essentially just ask it to perform a simple task, right? And if you think about all of the things that we're going to be asking computers to do for us, they can write content, they can fetch things from across the internet. I think one of the things that we're going to be asking is for computers to be transacting things on our behalf as well. And as they start to transact things, then of course, we're going to have some way and some medium of exchange for them to transact. So I think from that respect, then naturally blockchain or crypto specifically becomes the native currency of AI, because, you're going to be able to program your AI to, for example, trade cryptocurrencies on your behalf, or go and queue up for a content drop from your favorite game because they're going to be issuing content at 3:00 in the morning in your time zone and you don't want to stay up. So you make your AI go do it. But how is the AI going to go and make that purchase and transaction for you? It's not going to have a bank account. It can't have its own identity. So it needs to use crypto to do that, because, it can go and basically just transact with a wallet on its own autonomously.
Yeah, this is really super interesting. How AI is impacting the role of a game developer?
So I think on our end, it's primarily in the creation of art at the moment. And I think the biggest tool is, some of it is for the creation of art, because even especially in Web3 communities, generative art has been a big thing already for a few years. But I'd say more so for visualization tools as opposed to final content at the moment. So it's a way for team who is, it's an alternative to storyboarding. We used to, in the old days, create storyboards and mood boards and things like this to get a whole creative team around a concept of an idea. We're going to do, dragons in space, and everybody's like, what does that look like? And so somebody has to go and draw out storyboards.
Yeah.
And now you can basically do that with text prompts and generate images that everybody can share and get their head around the same concept and do it very, very quickly.
Yeah. So Luca, tell me, how much time can AI save for a developer? Because you do that professionally with your company. So I'm curious to see how much the work can go down thanks to AI.
Okay. By now, for the just technical prospect, not so much, because as Robby said, we are in a stage that we can, of course, use AI for drafts. But especially in the games and in 3D games, there are not products that are reliable, maybe to speed a 3D artist process. Maybe, it's still the AI that can produce 3D models are so young and unreliable today.
So you can't rely on them 100% to basically make the game, but you can, from a creative perspective, like Robby said, maybe you can have more assets, perhaps, with the right prompt.
Yeah, it's easier to share some ideas and prototype something.
Okay.
But it cannot today replace someone, You cannot split the team. Also, in the coding process, is not so advanced. Okay. AI today by this perspective.
Chas, do you have anything that maybe from your side you want to add?
Yeah, no, I think like it's a little bit different on the visual aspect of it. I think like the voice aspect of it, like there is a lot more things that you could do purely because like previously, like the majority of indie games studios wouldn't be able to actually afford for voice on it. Right.
Yeah.
That's where like there is a big leap in terms of like what you could do today with AI that you could not do even a year ago. Right. Who would want to put like Amazon's voices or Google text-to-speech or Azure voices in a game when they didn't really sound that great. I mean, unless you didn't have a choice, you would do that, right? But like indie developers benefited from the fact of saying like, actually, let's do like we will write the everything as a subtitles, and then essentially you will have to read it, right? Now, the beauty of it is like you don't really need to do that. You can essentially use like 11 Labs or any other tools to actually like give you those voices and voice that content. I think that's like taking it to a whole new level where, from my perspective, it's already adding like an extra improvement in terms of workflows, like development time, reducing cost, all of it, and be able to actually generate new experiences. But I 100% agree on the fact that like if you look at 3D elements, 3D assets, like quality or the resolution of those is not good enough yet to be able to actually deploy games or launch games with those assets. But like it's a matter of time. Like I think like the models are evolving so quickly that like next year, if we do this conversation in 12 months' time, I will probably guarantee that 100% of all of the gaming studios are generating 3D assets with AI models or LLMs. I can guarantee that will 100% happen for sure, right? It's just like the speed of development is going so quickly that even if today, like you feel that like part of your process is still not optimizable, give it a few more months and you're gonna get there, right? But there's other elements, other LLMs that already are giving you a huge amount of content. Text side, like thinking about like scripts and all of that, like you can use plenty of LLMs that generate text to get a bunch of ideas, right? That is something that is available today, and a lot of the studios are using, right? So there is all of these like areas, pockets of areas where you can start using it and being more efficient, and there is all other areas in which today you're not more efficient.
Yeah. So what about game testing and bug detection? Has AI got a role there, or maybe, possibly in the future, but not right now?
Definitely. I think on our end, I was just going to say, not specifically game testing, but smart contract auditing, we already do.
Okay, brilliant. Just to clarify this, when we are talking about AI, we are talking about LLMs to support, game evolution. What kind of apps, what kind of technology are we talking about? Shall we maybe list a few that you see are the one driving in the AI space for gaming? A part of 11 Labs, obviously.
One of the tools that we use actually is something that's developed by one of our portfolio companies, and it's called Blockade Labs, and they make a visualization tool. So essentially, you can just use text prompts to create a 360-degree immersive perspective, like a landscape. So it's really good for doing that kind of storyboarding that I was talking about, just because it's not a static image, it's a full 360 degrees. So it really gives you, when you're building immersive worlds, it gives you a big head start in thinking about what stuff might look like.
Luca, do you have any suggestion?
I personally use LLM just for maybe the lore and the story part of the production, and not gaming related, maybe by mobile apps related. I really love the video assistants, that they can integrate the LLM and also use a speech to text, text to speech voice, and you have basically video. They can talk to you, so you have also visual assistant on an LLM. That is we are doing it with NPCs, but the definition is really different, so that the user experience is really different.
Do you have which technology are you using from which company?
Oh, we are playing with DID. I find them so cool.
Okay, Charles, do you have any other suggestion for us?
I think there's plenty of solutions out there, right? But I think like there is a company that is not well known at all because they just raised some money. And they started like literally 12 months ago. But there is a company called vSim, vSim Technologies. They don't even have a website, funny enough. But what they've ended up creating is like an entire like physics engine. So like back to like Robby's point about like having a friend that was doing his PhD and was like essentially modeling clouds. Like truly, it's really, really difficult to actually apply real physics because the engines like haven't been fully optimized. So like this company has created like an entire physics engine that is like real time. It's able to simulate anything between liquids, like clouds, clothing, like anything you wanted. Those guys, I think, like are absolutely fantastic. Like they're gonna be like making some splashes like relatively soon, but I think like there's plenty of tools in the market today that will help you generate assets and make them useful for the studio.
Yeah. Last points that I want to discuss is investment. It's quite clear now that there is investment going into the next generation of gaming when it comes, to AI, obviously in the Web3 space. But is AI not too expensive for indie developers? Then I know that Charles, you said that is actually giving tools that otherwise they wouldn't be able to afford, but at the same time, those tools are quite expensive. So how that is going to work?
I think it depends a little bit on what you're using them for, right? If you're using them to generate dynamic content and dynamic assets, it is very expensive, right? If you're using them to actually not generate those dynamic elements and essentially create games that deliver good experience, they're limited in scope to some extent, then that's where you can have huge amount of synergies and improvements in cost. Getting a license to use DID for $20, getting a license to use Midjourney, the number of assets that you render, right? Or tokens, getting a license to use 11 Labs, that's $5 a month. OpenAI, that's what, 20 something, $30 a month, right? So in practice, you might end up spending $100 to generate a lot of assets, and you can cancel any time, right? So it just depends on what you're using it for and how you're building your games. Probably not that expensive. It's going to be a lot more expensive, if you would pay real people to do those assets.
Yeah, that's true.
Leveraging LLMs, right? But it depends. I think it depends on the budget that you have. It depends on a bunch of what's your goal, the type of game that you're building, whether you're building a AAA versus you're building a mobile game, or you're building something that is a side project, or it just depends essentially what type of context you have. Then it can be quite cheap, or it can be quite expensive.
Yeah. Robby, do you maybe want to give us some insight on what you see being the trends in AI investment in the gaming industry? I mean, maybe if there are any challenges or any specific opportunities that you are mainly focusing on, what you're looking for as a VC.
Sure. I think for us, it's really about seeing how people are using AI in a I want to say substantive way, meaning there's lots of cool things you can do with AI as a tool and a technology, but to think about how you can really start to use it to make a meaningful change in either the way in which you service your customers or in the quality of the product you're creating. Obviously, if you figure out a way to cut your overhead cost of game development substantially, then that's a fantastic implementation. Maybe a little bit less sexy, but it's great for the bottom line. Or if you figure out a way in which to increase rapidly your productivity so you can, make 3 games instead of 1 for the same budget, then of course that's great because we're in a hit-driven industry. I think that there's definitely potential for this to be quite dramatic in terms of actual game development itself. Meaning, for example, we have a portfolio company called Rosebud, and they already have been working for over a year on an engine that allows you to generate code so that you can basically make casual mobile games from a text prompt. And, I think that's just kind of a view of the tip of the iceberg, because you start with the casual mobile games, and then in 2 years, we're going to have, immersive Unreal 5 games that are made from text prompts. So that's when the 3 of us have to start to worry about adding value at our workplaces to make sure that we're still needed. But I don't think that we're there yet. So I think at the moment, it's more of a productivity tool internally.
Okay. Well, guys, thank you so much for coming on. I think that was really interesting. And let's see, how the space is evolving. Super exciting. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you.